Hey guys, welcome to the very first of my weekly recap videos where I'm going to be telling you exactly what I did, why I did it, and what I learned. I just want to take a moment to say thank you to all of you guys who have shared the page so far and have got stuck in and commented. It's been a wicked week and it's all thanks to you guys, so thank you so much. Why do I always need to burp when I'm doing this? Why? Just burping constantly. So this week's just been what I call free writing. I've had no constraints on the kind of work that I was going to do this week, except for the time I've had to do it. Now that's a really, really great thing, but it's also incredibly daunting and can sometimes be the enemy of creativity if you have no constraints and absolutely no ideas what parameters you're working to. So for that reason, going forward, I'm going to be introducing what I call themes or rules or kind of songwriting challenges each week, and they're going to be a set of rules or parameters that limit what I'm allowed to do, with the idea being that I'm going to learn something from it or maybe fall in love with the process as a result. So as I said last week, I almost always write my lyrics last, but I will be forcing myself to write lyrics first for a whole week. I'm also going to be doing a week of 4-chord only songs, although this week almost qualifies. Following that, a week of, only songs that don't fit into a 4-chord structure, so, more complex, perhaps chromatic-based harmony. I've got loads of ideas for themes for each week, but I do need more. So if you've got any ideas for something you'd like to see me try doing, let me know. So I'm going to talk about this week's coming theme at the end of the video, but for now, I'm going to talk about the songs that I wrote for you this week. So the first song this week was Before It Turns to Rain. Now, I've said it twice now, I write my lyrics last, but this song was the exact opposite. This was one of those very rare sort of eureka moments where a song lyric appears before anything else. So I've got a text message from someone saying there's a Rooster's Chicken in Brighton. I'm gonna freak. I can't believe it. I bloody love roosters. Anyway, so that bit was quite straightforward, but making the lyric fit into a song was the challenging part. So the lyric that arrived was the main hook. It was, I don't feel like falling just like the water before it turns to rain. I think that's quite a nice little lyric, but it's not the sort of thing that I could get away with saying to someone, because it kind of has this air of like smugness if I say it. So the challenge was, how do I make that fit into a song? Well, what I figured instead was, if I have the other character in the song say the lyric first, then that other character feels kind of interesting and kind of alluring and wise and kind of mystical, and then that allows for me, the storyteller, to kind of come up to that level for the second chorus and set it back. That then allowed me to be a bit more kind of self-deprecating in the verses, like put myself down a little bit, classic like unlucky in love kind of guy. That then gave the story a little bit of an arc, where I'm fascinated by somebody and they give me an insight that I didn't have before, and I then share in that insight towards the end of the song. It's a very predictable pop structure. I write most of my songs in the same structure, which is verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. It gives for a nice flow. I don't want to write all my songs like that. There are a couple of other things that I did that are also really predictable too. So the soft chorus, loud chorus for the last one is so overdone in my own music, let alone in the world. But there was a nice little twist on that I think I used in the first 2 choruses, which was I left an extra 2 beats between the end of the pre-chorus and the chorus. This was really just to allow for me to be able to sing it and breathe properly in the right place. But it does mean that when the chorus lands, it feels so much bigger because everything kind of came to a close and then bam, there's the chorus. So dropping away just before a chorus is a really, really powerful thing to do. I always think of Toxic by Britney Spears is the classic example of that, where you've got the world's most boring 1-note guitar riff and then the chorus just explodes out of nowhere. So yeah, bring the texture right down and then allow for the chorus to bring it back up again. That'll definitely allow for your choruses to land and sound much bigger when they get there. The second song this week, Carry Me On Home. Wow, I've never done anything like that before, ever. Interesting that you guys have picked up on the kind of the Irish feel of the thing. That wasn't my original feeling for it. I think it's more based on where I am physically. I live in Cornwall at the moment, and I felt it was very Cornish. But it would definitely have this kind of Celtic kind of influence, traditional folky sound, and Irish folk music is probably the most famous. So yeah, it does sound like that. I think the recorder gives it that feeling, and the recorder was a really interesting determining factor in the way that song turned out. I knew it needed a recorder or a tin whistle. I don't have one, and the recorder determined for me which key it was going to be in. I haven't played recording in about 20 years, but because I played it as a kid, I still remember how, and I still remember where the finger positions are, and I knew how to play this song on the recorder before I even held the recorder. And I knew that the root had to be in a G position, otherwise it was practically unplayable. I'd never get the little trills in the right places. But whether I played it on a descant recorder or a treble recorder would determine which key it was in. So if it was on a descant recorder, the song would be in G, and if it was on a treble recorder, it would be in D. That then meant I had to pick up my guitar and actually start singing this melody while playing some chords and seeing where it fit the best. And when I was playing it in D, the vocal didn't have the same energy in the right places. It just didn't fit with my range in quite the right way, and I wasn't able to give power to notes where they needed them, and D just felt wrong. So then the song was in G. So I guess what I would take away from that is, if you're struggling to make decisions about a song, think about all the instruments that are going into them and where they sound the best in their range, and I consider the voice an instrument in that respect as well. Really plan which key it's going to be in before you get there, because you might write this amazing arrangement and then realise that the vocal doesn't lift in the right places if it's in the wrong key. Sometimes also just force yourself to write a song on an instrument that has more constraints or you're less familiar with. I write a lot of my songs on the piano and the guitar, and there's practically no constraints on the key choice that you can make there. You can make pretty much anything work. It's fair to say that it's easier to play the piano in C major than it is in, F sharp minor. But having to use the recorder to make that decision for me was really interesting. And it forced me down a road I didn't know I was going to go down. So that was quite interesting. The vocals on this song, and actually the previous one, maybe all of them, I should point out these song recordings are demos. I'd never consider them to be commercial, like finished, broadcast radio recordings. Although BBC introducing in Cornwall disagree, because they're playing this very song tonight on their Cornish music show. But for me, it's such a big deal to give something to a listening audience when it's not perfect, it's not finished. This has been a really, really big deal for me. And there are big issues with all of the songs for me. I think some of the lyrics need a lot of attention. The vocal performances are as rushed as you could possibly imagine. I mean, it's really throw a mic in front of me, sing it, reading the lyrics off my pad of paper, and if there's harmonies, I just do the same thing again. So, vocal recording session on these things can be 10-15 minutes, and that's really it. And I hate that. Oh God, I hate that. I'm so used to really getting into the nitty-gritty of the vocals and just going to town on it, really thinking about every single note and inflection, and that's not what's happening here. So I know they're really rough and a bit dodgy, but hey, that's part of the process. It's the most challenging for me so far this week. The third song this week I called Throwing It All Away. This is a very comfortable place for me, this writing quite vague, sad sounding, epic kind of rock music. I think I fell into this place because I was so busy that day. I didn't even start writing this song until gone 6:30 in the evening, and I didn't have much time. I didn't really know what I was going to do. I went back through some old back catalogue stuff, and I found a piano sound which I'd made, which I call the ghost piano, which is effectively a piano that's running through an amp, and it's got all sorts of mad EQ on it, so it just sounds kind of horrible and old. It's also got a chorus on it, which gives it a slightly out of tune feel. And I was just kind of playing some chords on that, some moody stuff. Then I moved on to the drums, and I played the drums through on that track the kind of chorusy, the chorus bit. I knew it needed to explode into the chorus, but I wanted it to have some movement, so I played this tom groove that was kind of back and forth, and that, because the toms are panned quite far left and right, that gives it some stereo movement, and it makes the sound field quite interesting. But what it didn't have was this big kind of like oosh, bap thing. It didn't have the big backbeat thing happening, so I actually layered another drum kit on top of that, where I was just like stomping on the bass drum and whacking the snare as hard as I could, and just made that really nice and roomy, and that was cool. Reminded me of a song which I really like by a band called Anave, called Anti-Faith. I think it's got a similar kind of groove where it's just like big drums. Check out that song if you haven't already, it's cool. A lot of people have said that there's kind of like a Linkin Park vibe about this song. I, first to admit, I'm not a huge Linkin Park fan, but that's cool. I mean, they definitely write big kind of stadium rock anthems, and listening to it again, it does sound like Linkin Park. So cool. Fourth track this week, called Somehow. Now I have a little confession to make about this one. Some of this song I actually wrote last year. It's one of those situations where you've got something I call an off-cut, just something that was never finished. You intend to finish at a later date, but you don't for some reason. I originally wrote the guitar and melody for a commercial for a big bank in the United States, and it was for a commercial which was quite emotional. It was quite soppy, quite a nice bit of a tearjerker. I didn't realise at the time, but it's been pointed out to me since, that it sounds exactly like that Jose Gonzalez song. And it does. It does sound exactly like it. Soz, Jose, please don't sue me. That's probably why I didn't get picked, actually, for the commercial. Anyway, I needed to finish the song, and I thought it was quite a nice little kind of country-inspired track. This song really made me think about exactly what the process of lyric writing is. The second verse I found a little weird. I didn't really know where to begin with the second verse. So then I just looked back and thought, well, what am I actually trying to say? What's the storyteller in this song saying? What do they feel? What's the message? And it was simple. The message is, I miss you. This was a great exercise for me to distill the message of the song into like 2 or 3 words. Because I'm certainly guilty in my songs of dancing around the point quite a lot. I like to hide behind metaphor and simile and don't actually just tell people what I'm trying to say. I'm quite bad at it in real life as well. Quite bad at it in these videos. I'm not very good at just saying the thing that I'm trying to say. So looking at the motivation of the songwriter, the storyteller in this song, just thinking, I miss you. Well, what comes with that? What's the reality of that situation? What does a person who misses someone have around them physically? What would they want to say to somebody? And it was nice. I've learned to not necessarily be more literal in the lyrics that I'm writing, but be more literal about where I put myself in the songwriter's setting, so I can understand that person's feelings a bit more clearly. And if I'm not conveying the message in the song, why not? What do I want people to hear when I'm telling them a story? The last song this week was called Once Around the Sun. Now, I feel like this would fit in really nicely in an end of episode montage in series 1 of the OC. This isn't a coincidence. I'm watching the OC for about the 100th time all the way through. I just got to the end of series 2 again, and it's just as epic as it was back in 2005. Seriously. This song was deliberately understated. I wanted it to feel organic. I wanted it to feel honest. I wanted it to feel close. I almost wanted it to feel a bit like you can imagine someone singing it to you at a campfire. So it's really stripped back. It's just one guitar. There's one string line and some percussion. I actually used brushes and played my notepad as that kind of shakery kind of drum sound, just to give it some movement, some drive. That I think came from the fact that there's a Led Zeppelin song called Ramble On, and I believe the sound of the percussion in that is John Bonham playing a chair or even a notepad or a book or something like that with some drumsticks. So this is really cool, just how it give you that kind of organic feeling, that natural sound, the improvised sound in a way. Now, as it's the first of these videos, I'm not entirely sure what it is you guys want to know about the songwriting process. There are things that I think are really obvious that I'm not going to bother talking about, and things that I think are interesting that I'd love to tell you about that might not be what you want to hear at all. So what I'd encourage you guys to do is, as the weeks go by, if you hear something in one of the songs and you think, oh, how did you do that? Well, ask, I'll tell you. I get asked a bit about how I create my string sounds. And I've got a couple of different string libraries that I use, but it's really difficult to make programmed strings sound realistic. And one of the things I've tried doing recently, I've tried to get one real violin on the recording and then flesh it out with sampled strings. Now, I don't know any violin players, so I've had to buy a violin and try and learn how to play myself. And yeah, I've had some success, but mostly I suck. So it's been tough. But if I can force myself to play one of the lines on the violin, even just one sustained note with a bit of vibrato, which I think is tough, that fools the listener's ear into thinking that all of the strings are real. I think in a more convincing way than not doing that. Ideally, I'd have real strings and everything, but hey, I'm made of money. So yeah, if there's anything you really want to know how that's done, I'll tell you. In future videos as well, I'm going to be giving you a bit of a rundown about what gear I'm using. As this week was kind of free writing, I wanted to just kind of introduce you to this a bit more, but I will go into some more specifics about the gear I use in later videos. So this week's theme is going to be writing for one instrument and a vocal. I feel like all the best songs ever written can be played on just the piano and sung, or with just the guitar and sung. And many records have been released in that form. I mean, all of Adele's records, pretty much, the most famous ones, are just one vocal and a piano. If you look back at Bohemian Rhapsody, those sections where it's just Freddie and the piano are for me the most compelling. I think the measure of a really, really good song is, can it be distilled into its purest form with one instrument and a vocal? I'm very guilty of hiding behind big arrangements and, stuffing guitars on there, big drums, pianos, strings, tons of vocals. Oh my God, let's hide this song in polyphony. And I'm not suggesting this week I'm going to suddenly turn into Diane Warren and write classic tunes. Just one vocal and an instrument, but I think it's a really, really interesting exercise to force yourself to just write a song. I think it forces you to be much more aware of the musical hooks. There's an example I think of all the time, and I'm not a Coldplay fan, but if you listen to Fix You by Coldplay, when the vocals are gone, there's just that piano melody. It's just like two notes back and forth. But it's such a huge musical hook, and I felt like that could only happen if someone was writing that song for just voice and piano. So this week, I'm limiting myself, just one instrument and a vocal. Let's see what happens. If you've got any ideas for any more challenges or any themes for the weeks, please do let me know. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you on Monday.